All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. And our guest, Samuel Hoffman, our returning guest, Samuel Hoffman. Samuel, do we have you there with us?
Yes, you do. It's really good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you. How have you been here as of recent?
Oh, God, we've been so busy. It's just been unbelievable. You know, there's been all kinds of really cool sightings going on. And, I mean, it's gotten so busy above us, it's actually very difficult to even identify what's we've been staring at for 10 years. They're so thick above us right now. It's just unbelievable. And everybody's just eating it up, and it's all coming into fruition, and it's all matching, and it's wonderful. You know, being correct is just fantastic. And
I wouldn't
we finished our 10-year study now. It's been 10 years we've been proving this now. So, and, you know, these are all sightings that are all legitimate, and time after time they match and they match and they match. And you should see what's coming in from Europe this week, but I'll let you talk for a second.
Yeah, well, why don't we remind our listeners what it is that we're talking about here? We're talking about Nibiru, and we're talking about that, why don't you explain what Nibiru is and what its relationship to Earth is to give our listeners a reminder course.
Okay, we live in a solar system with what currently we're listing as 8 planets, now that Pluto is no longer attached to the theory, but, you know, smaller stones, smaller than Earth size. Our sun, and then we also have a binary secondary sun and its sister 8 planets that are cohabiting, co-orbiting, always have, always will, and they return every 3,654 years approximately, give or take, 50 years or so. And if you go back to the Mycenaean period and the beginning of the Bronze Age, that's when the last passing of the planet was. And this is where we saw climate change, we saw climate migration due to loss of crops, et cetera, all throughout the end of the Egyptian dynasty, the changing of the northern part of Africa, et cetera, and global climate change, and, of course, tectonic breakup, et cetera, et cetera. Now, these planets return. We are not orbiting together as a group, but as in separate groups, yet they're attached to our own suns. But currently, the two suns are they're like thread attached to each other. And we've had some really interesting sightings of something strange happening to the sun today. And as a matter of fact, about 3 hours ago, there was an asteroid blast above the coast of Africa, and it was listed as a 9-point earthquake. But the depth was 0, and followed by another 5.3, and that was listed as 130 kilometers plus. So there's all kinds of really cool stuff going on. And of course, this is the asteroid groups that orbit underneath the passing planets, and they are so close to us, and they pass so close that sometimes they buffer into our atmosphere. Now, what people need to understand is that the planets do not collide. We're not in a gravity well like Einstein assumed. I mean, we can go on about that some other time, but we live in an electrical universe. The planets, they come close, they discharge off each other, push each other away. Just the same reason that my fingertip will not mix with a countertop or with the wall, because there's a little micro lightning electrical storm between my matter and the matter of the countertop or the wall that pushes each other away. We cannot mix our stuff, and that's how our solar system works as well. And the planets have been visible, if you knew what you were looking for. For anyone that started looking around 2010, and they were close, and they were very large, and we weren't looking for these tiny little dots. And that's what threw everybody for the longest time. They were staring for planets the size of Saturn and Mars and Venus and these tiny little dots in the sky, and these things are coming so close to us. And, I mean, it's still to this day boggles my mind how this all works, but we've had so many sightings over the years, it's absolutely undeniable. Add to the purple planet and its white moon, always come up the same. They always have the same facial markings. The massive gas giant Uri always has the same facial markings, the same base cloud with asteroids underneath. Nepesity's bottom, I watched Nepesity go by us in the south here last week, and it was this huge, massive, standard run-of-the-mill Nepesity base cloud. So we've seen these over the last 10 years, and we've documented them for so long that we actually have learned how they all individually look. And time after time after time, these pictures come in from around the world, from Europe, from Australia, from Ireland, from Scotland, I've got a couple of great people in Hungary, I've got people in Japan, Malaysia, you name it. We've got people. I mean, we even had some Russians, and of course, those folks aren't talking to us very often. We've got some new members from China. So all of this information is being documented, and we're not guessing about this. We only call something when we've had 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 examples of this. And this also leads me to, for the last 4 weeks over Europe. Now, anyone who's been listening to our last show, they've been documenting the sightings of the Texas Cube, and you can look that up on YouTube. It's called the Texas Cube because it was first originally sighted over Texas and documented on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we've been citing the Texas Cube every day for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and they're not hiding anymore. And that really inclines me to believe that something really important is up. We've also seen star destroyers just like the ones in the movie Star Wars, and I am not kidding you, by eye sightings and numerous pictures for over a month. And these are, they're exact copies to the Star Wars movie. And we've had documented pictures coming in from around the world. So, folks, you really got to get on board with this because it's happening. It's real. 10 years we've been watching this. And they're here. And you were asking in the early beginning of the show, where is Nibiru? And it is coming literally past us every day. Saturn is the reason that the skies are as red as they are. Saturn has a yellow moon in front of it, and it is bright, and it's also yellowing the skies. Hopefully, people out there are noticing that there's this really weird look to the sky with this odd, almost grayish milky, and it should be much brighter, but it doesn't look quite right. And that is because the larger planets that are close right over the top of Earth are blocking the light in what we refer to as a cutoff flare. And it changes the shape of the sun, and you'll see these little refractive side angles of the light cutoff. And it's making the skies look really kind of weirdish yellow, gray, almost milky. And it's a cool effect. And if you can't see the planets from where you are, you can at least notice that the lighting is really wrong. And we've recently had a whole bunch of nighttime sightings where people were seeing the purple skies at night. And just recently, the NOAA announced that after the hurricane, the purple skies were what they technically called atmospheric scattering, which is completely meaningless in my book. But they're trying to lie about the fact that these purple skies, nobody's ever seen purple skies until Attu got here, and it's a refractive color off of a very close passing planet. Same thing with when the skies are deep, almost teal turquoise green, and that's when Nepenthe is passing. Or if the skies go into this milk out complete white, that's when Uri is passing. Now, recently, Attu's moon has been so very large and so very close to Earth that it literally fills the sky and illuminates. And some people have been wondering why the sun went down 2 hours ago, and yet they're in the northwest sky. It's still illuminated, and they don't know why. That's because there's refractive light coming off the bottoms of these planets as they go over us. There's so much particulate in the air with all the volcanoes and the chemtrails and all that stuff I don't want to mention, but and the forest fires and everything else, that people don't get an accurate view. But up here in Montana, we get a far better view because our air is thinner and we have far less of the particulate up here, and we get a better view because we're just closer to the sky. And it's been phenomenal. This is beyond reproach. We have thousands and thousands of pictures. They're here. And people really got to get this into mainstream because, only through shows like yours and sites like mine, Montana Skywatcher 2 and 1 on Facebook, are we sticking to, we're sticking to empirical science here. We're doing all the things and, dotting our T's and dotting our T's and crossing our I's. Yeah, anyway, you can tell who's had too much coffee today.
Right.
But we've documented this long enough that it's absolutely proven. And anybody who is doubting this right now is apparently not looking up, and they're spending too much time watching the Kardashians.
Well, that would be just about anybody watching the Kardashians, in my opinion. But I got to tell you, we're coming up on break here, not too far off. But that's it is talk radio, so you're doing a good job. Yeah. But when we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit about you're saying that everybody needs to know and everybody needs to get on board. But there has to be reasons why we need to know and why we need to get on board. There's a lot of things maybe we don't need to know, so we're going to find out why this is one of those things that we need to know when we come back. You're listening to Samuel Hoffman here on Radio Wasteland, and don't miss out. Come on back.